All right, guys, this is Deer Anatomy Part 2. I'm going to cover several different situations with deer that are on my place constantly versus deer that are not. And I'm going to go over the buck segment of things here. I'm going to try to cover body changes as deer get older. And some of that will get a little bit more advanced, but I want to try to do the best I can here. If I have to space it out in another video, that's what we're going to do. So this is Rudolph. Rudolph is barely, in this particular video, barely over a year old. This deer has been in high nutrition compared to the surrounding property his entire life, other than the fact when they step off, but he was actually born on this ridge. And he is a descendant of Babyface. That's that big monarch doe I talked about. This is one of her offspring. And he is exhibiting some signs early in life that this deer is going to have a good sized body. The rack is actually not too bad considering what's around here. I would like to have a few more points. He did blade out up here a little bit. The rack was not quite done growing here, but he did add maybe another inch or two of length up here. But overall, for my area and how much land I own, that's very good results. This deer is also fairly thick-bodied. I would say that Rudolph may have surpassed Mr. Clean at the same age as far as body weight by the time September rolled around. And I'll show what Mr. Clean looked like at 1.5, and I'll show you what he looked like at 3.5. But no ribs showing, like I talked about before. We don't want ribs showing. Of course, his hind leg is raised up here, but let me let it play through a little bit. And you're going to see another buck enter the picture here, and I'll talk about him here shortly. So there, when he drops his leg, now this is going to be a little bit more typical with younger deer because their bodies are still growing very quickly, but he is a little sunk in back in here. Part of that is the limits of my property, and I can only feed them for so long until they get off my place. But there's no ribs showing. That's a good thing. This deer is entering the teen years as far as where he would be considered as a human being, and he has the chance to breed, which is it's low. He can still get pushed around, but we're gonna, I've talked about paying attention to the eyes of the deer. See, there's not really any muscle development around the eyes yet. This is a strong indication this deer is extremely young, because the older these deer get, the more muscle develops in the face, and then it makes the eyes look smaller and smaller as the deer gets older. So he'll squint down. Right now his eyes kind of bulge out. That's a good indication he's a young deer. Even on top of the head, there's a physical change that occurs in deer with their first racks. The skull plate, which right up here thickens up quite a bit for its first year, and it will continue to thicken up as the deer gets older until it gets around peak, and it should maintain or slightly decrease as it gets older. But this skull plate is preparing this buck for fights. It has to have a thicker skull plate, otherwise it's going to get severely injured. So this guy's getting ready. There is a seam running right up his head. This is where his skull has merged, and the older that these deer get, the more pronounced that seam becomes. You're also going to start seeing a Roman nose show up in deer that are 4 and older. And right now this deer has a skinny bird beak, is kind of the way I look at it right now. He's also fairly thick across the front. If you notice his stance right here, that's pretty good width for a youngster right there. So the only thing he's really lacking is more muscle development, and all that stuff comes with time. Youngsters are going to look the skinniest of your young bucks, and once they get older, things will start picking up. So let's run this through. Here comes the second buck into the frame now. This is a buck I call Homeboy. I did a video of his progression on this channel, and if you want to review that, you can go back and look at it. But Homeboy showed up in October and never left. Also, if you're trying to identify deer as they get older, if you notice how he's missing the whole end of his ear right here, very easy to identify Rudolph. Even without antlers, I'll know that's him. And I have not seen him since the end of November. So let's hope that he has survived the season, because I believe there's a legitimate shot that he could actually look bigger than Homeboy at this same age over here. So let's go to Homeboy here real quick. I won't spend too much time on him. But here we are, a deer 2.5 years old. And I just wanted this side view of him here. Not a single rib showing. Good muscle detail here. He's thickened up quite a bit. Pretty good improvement on his rack. And even as he's walking away, you could see he is just developing good body structure now. He has a lot of good weight in this area from left to right. And of course, the rear end and the width of his hips will get better as the deer gets older. I have not seen this deer also since roughly November 20th. I passed on him when he come through with a muzzle loader, and I have not seen him since. So hopefully he's still alive. I'd like to see how he has progressed. So here's the last video of him I want to show, because he's out here and he's put on more weight since then. And you can see him over here. Let me turn this. There he is there. You can tell he's put on quite a bit more weight. He's looking pretty thick there. His antlers are done growing in this video. He's just hardening up at this point. There is another buck in this field with him, and we call him Turf Toe, the one that's over here. He has got a broken hoof. So when he walks over here to him, and there you go, you can see the size difference between a 1-year-old deer and a 2-year-old deer now. See how much bigger he's gotten? That's part of that extra 40% of growth that's kicking in. And of course, Turf Toe probably won't look this good because he had a pretty significant injury. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now, is deer with good size for around here. Now remember, I'm basing my studies off deer from around here. So let's up the game a little bit. Let's go to Mr. Clean. Mr. Clean is a 3.5-year-old deer. And I got quite a bit of a collection here. Let me adjust this a little. So Mr. Clean is a buck that, actually, hold on, before I do that, let's go ahead and I'll show you the development of Mr. Clean here. So here he is at 1.5 years old. And look at the character that this deer is showing. This is the year that I started setting out trace minerals in my food plot, and look at the result for a first-year rack. This deer is very healthy. He is also thick left to right here. He has nice big hips, good sized neck and head. He actually had a fairly large head, and you can see a bit of a gut. Now the stage of my food plot here is nowhere near as good as it is now. So this deer got that good of nutrition as that's actually his mom pushing him off over there. That right there was Megatron. Never seen Megatron again. I think somebody got him. And he has good potential. You notice how he kind of looks like Rudolph. Very similar to Rudolph. And that is actually, Megatron is actually Babyface's mom, is Babyface's mother. So that's 2 years in a row that she's produced a buck with similar antlers, but Rudolph actually had a bigger set of antlers than he did, and his body's bigger. So that tells me I'm getting better as the nutrition in my ground increases. So there you've seen Rudolph at 1.5. There's you a still picture when he's still developing up here. But look at all the kickers and the bumps in there. That tells me I did a good job with nutrition. You can see here there he is there when he shed his antlers. Oops. So I was very pleased with how he turned out. Awesome. So now let's go into what he looked like at 3.5. So this is what that deer blew up into at 3.5. That is Mr. Clean. Mr. Clean is a big boy. This deer's live weight, we estimated at his peak weight, probably around 190 pounds, maybe as low as 185 live weight. Now this is after the rut. This deer has lost some weight. However, look here. Look at that belly sticking out. Nice pop belly. This buck was showing up nightly, not daytime, but nightly, every night in my soybean field, or my soybean food plot, eating the greens and the grains that I had in there. And he quickly put a lot of weight back on. And I do believe that this deer is dead. I'm not going to show the picture. I did receive a picture of him. And this point here added about 2 or 3 more inches. Another 2 or 3 inches to the end of his beam if it is him. And add another, I don't know, maybe another inch, inch and a half to these G2s here. That little kicker turned out to grow another 8 or 9 inches from that point this year. If it is him. He did drop the kicker that was over here, and he gained about 1 inch of mass around the beams, which was a big improvement for that buck at 4.5. But if he's not dead, he's going to be one heck of a deer. But I pretty much believe it is him. So anyway, but that tells you, that that my management program is working. So a deer that was born into my management program turned into this. And for a Tennessee deer, an East Tennessee deer, that is some fantastic results. This is not the largest buck I've ever had here. I did grow a booner before. I'm going to show you some close-ups of Mr. Clean here. And let me see if I can get it to... This might not be the one I want. No, let's go to the next one. So here he is up close and personal where I can see better detail, even though this is a foggy image. But this deer showed signs of much higher protein, nutrition content. He has a kicker right here that's not big enough to count as a point. He also has another kicker, or a little bitty shoot coming off here that wasn't long enough. That kicker there is 3.5 inches long. He also still had that little bump in the back where the 2-inch sticker used to be at 1. And this is the thing you're going to learn. Deer can add points, deer can drop points. He also tried to grow a drop tine right here. And in the picture that I think is him, there's actually a drop tine on the other side. But he exhibits, a lot of characteristics that I'm looking for. And as you improve your nutritional program, you're going to start seeing more deer with character points, more non-typicals. Your odds are going to go up. You have to get that expression out of them through nutrition. So if you think you got a bunch of typicals, it may be just lack of nutrition helping to express that. So this is the point I was talking about. It ended up growing out into here, this year, and that tine right there was like another 3.5 inches longer. Very nice buck. I wish I could have got him, but who knows? Fingers crossed. Maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of doubt that he's living. All right, so now let's get into some other situations about deer health. I want to show you a buck that showed up here. I called him Curvy. And this is Curvy right here. He's a 2.5-year-old. I'm going to let this video play through. Do you spot anything wrong with this deer? I'll rewind it here as soon as it's done. Remember, I told you his age is 2.5. Is there anything wrong with that deer? Okay, I think I've played, well, let it. And you can kind of see the side view there. There. Okay, so that's the whole video. Let's rewind this. Now, I know that most of my bucks that show up, whether they're on my property, often or not, the average size of a 2.5-year-old will probably be anywhere from 150 to, actually I take it back, somewhere around 160 live weight. So that means they're going to dress in the, 130s, low 130s, mid 130s, somewhere in there. Well, this deer, when I saw him, I was like, man, there's an issue. And I'm going to get it to where he, right there. That's good enough. Look at how sunk in this deer is. You can see every little detail. Let me try to get closer here. You can see every muscle detail in this buck. I can also see his ribs. This deer may have intestinal parasites, and I can tell you exactly how much this deer dressed because I killed this deer to help a family in need. Normally I don't shoot deer 2.5 years old, but I try to go to 3.5 the best I can or higher. It's very difficult on small tracts of land to achieve older deer, but he is very sunk in. You can just see a huge pit here. You can see all his muscle detail. I mean, I can see every sunken in thing on his legs. His veins are sticking out. There, he is so thin-skinned. This neck is just a skinny stovepipe. You can see where it's shriveled and shrunken in around his face. His face is thin. You can see a lot of detail around the face. This deer was not a part of my management program and showed up one time in July with two other younger bucks that were, or two other bucks that were his same age, and he looked like a midget out there compared to those two. So this deer definitely needed help. There's a lot of things wrong with this deer. Either he wasn't getting enough food or he has intestinal parasites. And if I kind of fast forward the video, pay attention to that sunken in area. You can see his stomach moving around. When deer are thin like that, it's easier to see details when they're breathing and stuff's moving around. It's just, you can't cover it up if you don't have enough fat there to hide that. So this deer is extremely underweight. I estimated that deer probably weighed 110, well, maybe 105 live weight or less. But he stuck around. He started showing up more. And here he is in November. Looks a lot better now, doesn't he? This is not, I shot this buck maybe 5 days after this video was taken. He was chasing one of our does, and he just went for a good purpose anyway. But this is the thing, my management program is working. This deer is in much better shape. I estimated that I probably put on an additional 30 pounds to this buck. No ribs showing. Now, of course, it's rut. The neck is swollen, but it's a lot better. There's a much better uh, facial structure now. There's a lot more fat buildup, muscle buildup there. This deer found some food that he desperately needed. I mean, even now, when you look at the legs right here, they're not sunk in anymore. They actually look like they got some mass to them now. His hips are bigger. This area here is much nicer on the transition from the hip to the ribs. Not a single rib is showing. He put on quite a bit of weight. And I'm hoping that he has, if it was a parasite infection, that he had flushed them out. And I didn't check his guts when I gutted him out. I should have, but I didn't. But overall, that right there is a good piece of evidence that the management program is working. And then I'm going to show you a buck that is probably the second largest buck body-wise I've had here. And his name is Poser. So there's Poser there. Thick deer for around here. In his prime before the rut hit, this is post-rut, I would estimate it that deer weighed approximately 100 and I would say 80, 190 pounds live weight, somewhere in there. This year, that deer, he's alive. He made it. He's a 4.5-year-old and a lot bigger. So there he is from the side. Let me find a better video here. There he is up front. I'll pause this when he looks at you. But you can, well, I'll stop here. You can see he's very thick across the shoulders, a broad set of shoulders. And he did gain some weight back. But the width, the older and thicker these deer get, the further this stance gets apart. He has a much wider stance than Mr. Clean. And I'm willing to bet that this buck could actually probably beat Mr. Clean in a fight. Mr. Clean has a bigger rack than him, but his body weight is just so heavy and thick that I believe he could have easily pushed him around. So what did Poser turn out to be at 4.5 years old? Well, here he is. Courtesy of my neighbor. And let me pan this around. There he is at 4.5. If you noticed in the previous video, he was a clean 7-point. He evened up greatly this year. I mean, there's not much difference between his left side and his right side. He is very, very even looking. So this kind of suggests that this buck may have been injured approximately 2 years ago, and he has recovered from this injury, and now the rack's going to take off. And here's what I'm talking about. The eyes are getting smaller. Muscle mass is much better. Look at how thick the jawline is getting. He is in the early stages of a Roman nose now. Next year, or this coming year, he'll be 5.5. Nobody got him. I would love to see what he looks like. Huge body on this deer. I estimate this neck is probably around 27 inches in circumference. Could be a little more, could be a little less. But look at the mass that he's put on here compared to his 3.5-year-old status. I would say he's added maybe 2, 3, or yeah, about 3 inches of height to the G2. That's about a 3.5, 4-inch gain here. That one stayed about the same, but gained maybe an inch. But the points themselves have doubled in mass or more as far as how big around the points are out of his head. The eye guards are twice as thick as what they was, and they retain the same height. He's also getting the characteristics of older deer. They develop a more rigid beam in here right off the head when they start getting better nutrition. Those bumps I was talking about get more pronounced as the deer gets older. And even in this kind of fuzzier image, I can see them wrapping around the beam. So he is getting some nutrition. He's also trying to grow extra kicker points. So he may achieve that this year and actually become a 10-point. There's a little something right here. I'm not really going to think that's going to turn into anything, but there is a little bit of a development of something there. I'm going to just say your odds are up here that he's going to grow 1 to 2, maybe 3 points off of these kickers up here. But look at the body. So last year you saw him, this was sunken in over here. It's merged. There's no sunken in area. He is thick as he can be. I love the fact that this deer is not dead. He may break Tank's record this year as far as the heaviest buck we've ever seen on this property. Tank was killed by EHD, and we estimated him to weigh 230 pounds live weight. Absolutely beast of a deer for around here. And hopefully my management program can bear some extra fruit. So this video is long enough. I will cover other deer study videos, but if you like these type of videos, hit that like and subscribe button. If you want to learn more, post it in the comments and I'll add more. But I hope you enjoy these videos. Y'all have a good day.